Hi guys, can you hear me?
I can.
Cool, brilliant. Right, thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it. If everybody can hear me, we'll kick off the meeting. Right, welcome to the Welsh Azure user group virtual meetup on the 10th of September. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping rules. We should have a fair few people joining us today. Got quite a nice packed agenda to run through. But yeah, obviously it's a virtual meet. You've all got your own control of your microphone. So if you could just make sure you're all on mute, that would be great. Housekeeping, be courteous to each other. We'll open up the microphones as and when the presenters are presenting any content, just keep on mute unless the presenters ask you, to come off and have a chat about something. Obviously, feel free to use the chat window, ask any questions that you need to. We've got a good bunch of guys on the line from Microsoft and obviously from the Welsh user group there to answer any questions that you might have. Just a bit of a heads up, make sure you've got the Kahoot app installed on your phone. So you've got a little bit of a quiz coming up. So if you've already got it, great. If not, make sure you've got that on your phone. Okie dokie. So just a quick overview of the Welsh Azure user group. I know a few of you have already joined us a couple of months back when we had a meetup. Just to give you a little bit of a background, really. So Microsoft have really supported us in getting this user group up and running as a Welsh Azure user group. I think you can see there that from the point of view of who's actually involved from a non-Microsoft perspective, my name is John Lunn. I work for BT Enterprise. We've got Richard Griffiths from Confused.com. We've got a Bull from Clearbank, and we've got George from the IPO. So we're all in and around. I think we're all pretty much South Wales based. But obviously, we're looking to kind of really get this group set up and started and get all you guys joining in and, being guest speakers. Any questions? Like we say, there's no silly questions. The floor's open. Anything that we talk about, we're hoping to get a bit of a mix of technical people, non-technical people. It's really about spreading the word of Azure, helping each other out. And I think once we can get back to the non-COVID situation, have some face-to-face meetups, that'll be ideal. Obviously, we can grab a pizza and a few beers afterwards at some location, probably down in Cardiff. But yeah, really big shout out and thanks to Anna, Matt and Ahmed from Microsoft, been really supportive on helping us get this group up and running. And on that note, another big shout out to our sponsor. I think we're really pleased to kind of have Servant on board with us. They're really here to support the user group and the kind of community, knowledge sharing community. So on that note, can I just hand you over quickly to Des from Servant, just to give a couple of words around Servant and what those guys are up to.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining. It's going to take a few minutes of your time. You've probably not heard who Servant are. As you can see from the slide there, we sponsor the Northern Azure user group in Manchester and the Glasgow Azure user group in Glasgow, obviously where we are based. Although we're Glasgow based, we work across all of the UK and beyond, to be honest as well. We're an all-up Azure partner. All we do is move customers to the cloud. Our tagline for the company is Modern Enterprise Acceleration, and that's really what we do. We unlock technical challenges, any blockers about moving to Azure, and just really accelerate that. We have been working with the Azure platform since 2010, so we've got really deep and long and varied experience across the platform, across a number of different services across the platform as well. We sit in the top 10 partners in the UK, and that's based on the amount of revenue we drive for Microsoft and our customer references as well. And our tagline, our marketing tagline, is Journey to a Modern Enterprise, and all of our offerings that you'll see on the next slide are effectively how we get you through that journey, depending on where you are in your maturity, but ultimately getting you consuming as much of Azure, opening up that innovation, unlocking your technical challenges as we possibly can. Next slide, John, please. And here's a bit more about what we do and how we do it. So our Journey to a Modern Enterprise is made up of a number of different offerings, and we start from a left to right approach. So the first thing we generally do is do an automated cloud assessment, where we will assess your on-premise computer room or data center, and that's really what our core business is data center exit. But as part of a data center exit, that unlocks a whole host of opportunities, be it data platform, modern apps, or DevOps. And what we try and do is take you through, or take customers, through this sort of staged approach, if you like. So from cloud assessment right through to VDI in Azure and in the bottom right there, which is underpinned by Windows Virtual Desktop. And it's a very logical path, and some customers might be at a different stage in that maturity, but our job is to help you along that path and push you as far right as we can. Even if it's advanced workloads such as SAP and Oracle, we've got a lot of experience around that. And that's really a lot about us. So we're here to support the user group. We're privileged and we're proud to support the Welsh Azure user group at such an early stage. We've seen the other two user groups grow tremendously in that community, and hopefully the same will happen with the Welsh Azure user group. We're here to support the guys. We're here to support them. We can do in-face meetups, hopefully. But that's probably enough about us. I'll hand you back to John. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, really appreciate that, Des. That's great. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's okay. So, like I say, big shout out to Servant. Thanks for sponsoring us and really helping us get off the ground on that front. So, okay, the agenda for this evening. So, I'm going to kick off things in a second and really talk you through the Microsoft Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure, just to really give you a bit of a high-level overview of what those services are all about and really what they can do for your business. We've got Chris Whitehead joined us from Microsoft. He's going to give us an overview of the enterprise scale landing zones, which really ties nicely in with the CAF overview. So obviously stay tuned for that. That's going to be really interesting stuff that Chris is going to be talking about. We'll see how we go for time. We're already running over a little bit, but whatever. We'll see how we go for time. We'll have a little break, a refreshment break, grab a drink or a coffee or whatever. And then we've got Richard joining us then from Confuse. Richard's obviously still he's part of our user group as well, one of the organisers. He's going to give us a little bit of a hands-on demo and a bit of a run through of how Confuse, I think, are using Azure Blueprint. So that's going to be really interesting stuff. As I mentioned, we've got a quiz. Now, really excited about this because we've managed to actually get some prizes for our quiz. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be after the show. Make sure you've got the Kahoot app installed and you could be one of those lucky prize winners. Aren't you all excited? So one other thing as well before we kick off, I was speaking with Anna earlier. For you guys that haven't heard of this, openhack.microsoft.com. Anna, are you on there? Do you want to give a quick sort of 2-minute overview as what OpenHack is all about, just so I don't get it wrong?
Hi, John. Yeah, absolutely. Let me just pop my camera on so everyone can see me. Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm Anna McNally from Microsoft. So I'm one of the cloud solution architects. And of course, I'm based in Wales. I actually live in Newport. So, proud to be on this call today and proud to support the user group. So, yeah, really interesting, actually, because I was speaking to John earlier. And John joined us on one of our open hacks on Tuesday to really discuss the Welsh user group. But what I thought was really interesting is that, not many people I've spoke to in our customer base had actually heard about the open hack. So really, to give you a bit of detail, the open hacks it's an immersive challenge-based hackathon where you're essentially working in teams of 6 or 7 to complete a series of technical challenges over the course of 3 days. So each hack is focused on a given technology area. And in the hack that I was on this week, coaching with Matt, who's on the call as well, we actually specialized in containers. However, we have open hacks that cover a variety of different services and areas in Azure. So hopefully John's sharing the link here, but definitely take a look at the open hack URL. The sessions are really, really useful. We had absolutely amazing feedback from the customer this week, and they're open to customers, or we could look at potentially setting up a private hack for your organization. So absolutely get in contact with me on the chat channel or reach out to your Microsoft account team, because these sessions are all about upskilling your teams that work in Azure. And we would just love to work with you and have a hack with your company or with users. So I think the next hack is a DevOps focused hack, which will be run next month. And we're looking to run a containers hack in December as well. So yeah, absolutely check out the open hack link because they are awesome. Thanks, John.
Well, thanks, Anna. That's great. Okay, on that note, then we'll kick things off. So, Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure. So, I mean, what we're looking at here, if you kind of hit the ground running, and you've got running services in Azure at the moment, that's brilliant. Obviously, that's great. What we're going to run through with Kath really is just to have a look at some areas that really might help you in your business kind of revisit what you've done with your implementation and really look at putting that strong foundation in place for building your Azure environment. Now, if you're a greenfield company, you're really putting infrastructure and services in place today, great. Really use these resources. So just going to give you a little bit of an overview. This is an agenda. We're going to look at why is cloud adoption important? You know, what are the important things? Why is it not just a case of throwing things into Azure and everybody's happy? We'll understand some of the drivers behind that. We'll have a quick overview of what the cloud adoption framework actually looks like and is about, and we'll have a click around a few of the websites. We'll see how time's getting on, whether or not we can get on with looking at some common blockers that I think have been recognised over the years of developing this framework, and we'll move on to some of the great tools and the assessments that Microsoft have got set up ready, accessible for you guys to use, and obviously start looking at using within your enterprise. And then we'll touch on partners and their role and what they play within the CAF program as a CAF ready partner. Okay, so why is cloud adoption important? Okay, so we all know that change is difficult, so we understand that when you're trying to make a business change to anything, not necessarily cloud, but anything technical, it requires more than just that technical element. So really the cloud adoption framework was formulated from a position of Microsoft understand how they work with their existing customers, working with partners, working with third-party vendors. They all came together and really formulated a set of best practice principles to really help you understand that it's more than just a case of throwing things into Azure. You know, there's the concept of understanding why are we actually moving to a cloud service. You know, it requires that radical approach of change of mind, change of culture within the business. Understand what you're actually trying to achieve. And so it's really an important concept to understand that once you're trying to adopt the cloud, there are many factors that play into what you're actually trying to do with the cloud. So the cloud adoption framework was put into place really to address some of those things and give people some access to collateral, documents, and tooling to really put some meat to the bones and understand how they can actually adopt the cloud in a practical, uniform, and a balanced way. Obviously, there's certain people within the business that you have to really look at. You know, there's senior leadership teams. You need to understand when you're actually transitioning to the cloud. Are you looking at migrating to the cloud? Are you looking to innovate in the cloud and do something really to drive business value, to really change the way that your business is operating? We're currently living in that state of digital transformation. Now that means different things to different businesses, dependent on where you currently are with your business. It might mean introducing new products and services on a complete and innovative solution that you've developed in the cloud, so a cloud-first strategy. It may mean you're looking to move some legacy infrastructure running on legacy apps and services within your existing physical data centers that you want to move to cloud services, but you need to really justify that. So understand how you're going to do it, what you're going to do it with, and really what is the benefit to your business. So really it's about understanding that you need to put some measurements in place and really take that steady approach to adopting the cloud in a controlled, measurable, and a governed manner, but equally not being too controlled and governed that you're kind of quenching that thirst for innovation, that speed to market that you might need. Okay, so what does the cloud adoption framework actually look like? So as I mentioned there briefly, really, I mean, what it boils down to is that whole aspect of looking at the not just the technical aspects. It's technology based, it's process based, it's people based. So looking at those people, process, technology elements within your business and really having that, like I say, that balanced approach to being able to implement whatever it is you need to implement in the cloud in a controlled and a stable manner. So in other words, you've got that concept of making sure that you need to, you know, have a good set of governance ground rules in place before you start putting stuff into the cloud. And so what CAF actually provides you is a set of documentation, a set of best practice tools, a big bunch of templates, really for you guys to scan through, and you can pick and choose what you actually need to make good for your business and make the right decisions going forward with the cloud adoption framework. So like I say, the key point to really take away from this is that change is far more than just about adapting the technology. It's adapting how you guys do business. It's adapting how the people in your business that are going to be managing these solutions have got the right skills, are able to hit the ground running, are able to implement these technical changes in that controlled and stable manner. Okay, so the CAF is essentially, it's made up of these building blocks. If you look at the diagram there on the screen, we start off in the center, and really it's about defining your strategy, and then we can move to the outer ring, which is really around once you've got a decent, well understood strategy built for your business, we move out into the planning stages. And like I say, each of these elements have got I'll take you through some of the websites in a second, but they've got Microsoft have got some really good tooling, some really good documentation to help you ask the awkward questions, ask the difficult questions to your business. So you're really getting that strategy that is actually specific for what you want to do with your business in the move to the cloud. So like we said before, you know, the strategy could be based on moving a single application from one place to another, or it could be that complete end-to-end piece. If things are starting to get a little bit cumbersome, a little bit more complicated in that you've got a lot of services that you want to move to the cloud, a lot of application services that need some form of transformation for whatever reason, obviously that can be quite cumbersome. So the general rule of thought is that this process, it's an iterative process. So you define your strategy based on a small achievable chunk of work, rinse, repeat, go through plan, the ready, the adopt phase, make sure you've got those govern and manage elements built in, rinse and repeat, go back to the drawing board for the next application. So that's how CAF can be used. I mean, fundamentally, it'll help your business get some really clear motivations, some clear understandings, and understand what those business outcomes actually are. And it's not just, you know, some guy in IT's found some great thing that we want to do in Azure, then we're rolling with it. Really just formalize that so the entire business can understand. So like I say, there are the sort of 6 elements to CAF. We'll quickly drill down into each one, quickly give you a brief overview of those. So starting off with defining the strategy. So we know that when it comes to moving to the cloud, the way that it's been framed is that there's generally 2 trains of thought. We're either migrating some stuff, some infrastructure, some application base into the cloud, and there can be some clear motivations to that. You may be exiting a data center to save cost. You may want to reduce complexity within your data center or generally within your estate. You know, optimizing operations and increasing your business agility, things like that. There's a set of common triggers that push the desire to want to transition to the cloud. That's on the migration side. If we look at the other option, it might be that as a business you're digitally transforming and you're looking to really you know, drive to the cloud. You've got some innovation triggers. So it could be that, you know, you've got a competitor that's released a product and you need to really change your culture, change the way your business is working and adopt Azure, adopt the PaaS services, build your applications in Azure. So it might be you're improving experiences and engagements for your customers, even for your internal customers. If you're working for a business, you might be there to transform a set of existing products that might be running on legacy OSs, legacy platforms in a traditional sort of data center. It might be that you use that opportunity to really get under the hood of those applications and drive that transition and that development into PaaS elements or whatever it might be within Azure, and disrupt markets. You're looking to really innovate and produce new and exciting things. You know, we know the kinds of products and services that are available to us all now within Azure, you know, from AI to machine learning. There's some really exciting stuff going on that even as an individual, we can get in there, create a free account, but that can drive into the wider picture of what CAF is all about. So like I say, the first thing is really define that key strategy. Let's understand what it is that your business or that particular part of your project is looking to do. That's the first part of CAF, is to really understand and get that clear and understand what your motivations are. Once we've got that kind of strategy defined, we move into this planning phase. So really part of the planning phase is broken down into a few aspects. I won't drill down into more altogether. We'll probably jump onto the website quickly and take you through that. But fundamentally, it's about really giving your existing infrastructure an assessment, you know, understanding what you want to do with that infrastructure. And this isn't a 5-minute job, of course. This is a case of really understanding what your existing environment is all about. You know, there's the concept of the 5 R's. So what your current infrastructure, what do you want to do with it? You know, there's generally 5 options that you've got. There may be more, but generally speaking, you want to rehost it, you want to refactor it, you might want to re-architect that solution. You might want to rebuild it or completely put the thing new into Azure, or you're looking to replace and upgrade. So that kind of principle of really doing some form of an assessment and plan out what you want to do with each of those workloads. How do you want to get them into the cloud? What reason? What justification? How does it align to your strategy? So once you've gone through the planning phase, again, all this relates to information that Microsoft have got on the CAF website, which we look at. We move into the ready phase. Now generally, there's a couple of elements to the ready phase, and I'll touch on a couple now. So things like understanding the current skill set of your organization, the staff that are going to be doing this work, that are going to be monitoring and managing and moving forward within your business. You know, what are their skills like? Are they ready to adopt the cloud? Do they need reskilling? So part of CAF is to ask those questions and create training plans for your workforce. The other part of ready is things like, do we jump straight into CAF, or do we, how do we adopt CAF? Is there something that we can do to really help us get the ball rolling and hit the ground running, so to speak? And that is absolutely it. It's about creating what Microsoft would call a landing zone. And this ties really nicely in with what Chris is going to talk us through in the next piece. But really understand that once we've got our skills sorted, once we've created our first landing zone, which I won't go into, I'll let Chris take us through all that in a second. We're ready. We're ready to engage with that actual plan that's based on our strategy and start moving our applications in whatever form we've planned to do into Azure. We move through the ready phase and we move into the adopt phase. Now, as I pointed out earlier, when we looked at the defined strategy, generally speaking, there's two camps. There's a migrate camp or there's an innovate camp. Then there's two different trains of thought about how do you adopt the cloud in those two factors. Again, CAF website, we'll go through a couple of things. It will really just make you understand, ask the right interesting questions. And really underpinning that whole plan, ready and adopt phase is a set of requirements that really govern and manage, kind of go hand in hand. It's really about getting that balance, getting those guide rails, if you like, around your Azure subscription or subscriptions, really putting those guide rails in place so that you know full well that if in the future or any time you've engaged to a piece of project work that you want to put some object back into Azure, you want to set some infrastructure or some application service in Azure, you've defined those guide rails. You've put things like Azure policy in place that will allow you to create certain size VMs, certain things within storage accounts, or not allow you to create them in certain respects. It's all controlled by our back. So, Microsoft are leveraging the roles-based authentication controls that are really part of Microsoft products baked in. We can use that. We can put those things into place. I always kind of liken it a little bit like the old group policy against an Active Directory, but you can really put those governance policies in place. It ties in with blueprints. What do? We've got a set of artifacts that we actually want to get into. So Griff's going to take us through a few demos around that. So it really underpins, it brings that stability, that governance, that idea that when we put something else into Azure, it's golden. It's there, it's set up. We know we're not going to go too far wrong, and it aligns with all our business regulatory requirements or business requirements, security requirements. We can control all that in the govern and manage. And like I say, the Cloud Adoption Framework has got some really good collateral and information to help us work through that. And we'll touch on that. Actually, there's a governance baseline. I'll touch in a second. We'll have a look. What I'm going to do, there's a couple of slides. All of these slides, by the way, I'm going to upload on a GitHub after the event, so they're available. I'm not only looking at the time that we've got now. I don't think I'll dwell too much, but these slides really just talk to us about typical blockers in an organization. How do we overcome them? Now, you can see there that there's a number of steps. When you get these slides, you look in the notes. There's just a few steps around align stakeholders, align partner support, and they will all relate to collateral that you can get off the CAF website. So I think what I'll do for the purposes of saving a little bit of time is I'll skip through these quickly, because I'm sure you're going to want to hear more about enterprise scale landing zone. I know I do, and I want to see Griff's blueprints as well. So, but yeah, have a check through them. Basically, just to kind of summarize what CAF is, to talk about the last of the PowerPoint slides now, is really it's to find your path as a business. It's a set of collateral, it's a set of tooling, it's best practice, pick and choose what works for your business, use the templates and tooling to really help you get onto that journey if you're not there already. Or even if you are there already and you've done all of this work but you've not used CAF, revisit CAF. Really look at how you guys have implemented your infrastructure. Just retrospectively look back through the CAF artifacts and materials and see if you can retrofit those kind of ideas and those best practices into your organization. Okay, quickly, what we'll do then, we'll, again, I won't dwell on this slide, there's a lot of text on here, but these are all links to all of the tooling and documents that we've got that we can get access to. There's our URL, in fact, in case you can't see my cursor. I don't know if you can see my cursor, actually, let me just laser pen. Right, so there's our URL, aka.ms/adopt. We'll get access to all of this good collateral. So on that note, let me just see if I can kick off to, yeah, 1 second. Let me just escape this a sec. And I'll take you through a couple of the toolings. So the first tooling that we saw there was really, it's a cloud adoption tracker setting. Like I say, all the links are in this in the PowerPoint slides. I'll quickly take you through this. Now, this is one in true Blue Peter fashion, one that I prepared earlier. I didn't give any rhyme or reason to my answers, but essentially you log on, you log in with a Microsoft ID, you answer all the awkward questions, have a think about the questions. Don't really take any notice of what I've answered. It was literally a point and click. But what this cloud adoption tracker gives you is really a high level view. Once you've finished all of those questions, is it gives you a little bit of an idea of, right, what areas of CAF should I really consider looking at? Obviously, you give some truthful, meaningful answers to your business to that cloud adoption tracker. And you can go back and you can update those answers and kind of track where you're going. So in other words, you're measuring your baseline in terms of what you're currently doing, but then you're able to kind of measure against how you're performing. Are you getting better? Are you getting worse? Along the lines of where you're going for plan, adopt, being ready and your governance. With that, there's another tool, which is here we go. It's probably timed me out on log on now. It's probably going to ask me to log back in. Nope, there we go. Again, this is one I prepared earlier. So this is the CAF baseline for governance. So really, again, it's about understanding what your business is currently doing at the moment in terms of governance. You fill in a big bunch of questions, which we can go back to the assessment here, and you can see it's a bit like a radio button checkbox. Takes us through all of these areas: organizational readiness, what do you do around cost management, what's important to you, what's not so important to you. Helps you try and align your priorities and just understand where your business is. And then what it does is it takes you through to a nice graph setup. So really try and, I think you can guarantee I'm going to have to click next through the lot, aren't I? Yeah, bear with. This is why I shouldn't have clicked back there, shouldn't I? Bear with, we'll get there. There we go. So what you get at the end of it is really 3 columns. And if we look at the key here, we look at what your business priorities are. I mean, I've obviously clicked things that I think are massive priorities, but it really then looks at what your current state is and really aligns it to what your industry, where you mark in terms of what your industry is currently up to. So again, it's a really good tool set to take to senior level execs, explain why the cloud is maybe a good strategy to take it. Maybe it's not, but the idea is that it's a set of tooling that will help you justify and get that business buy-in for the move to the cloud in terms of governance. Makes you think about what do you actually need to do, where could you go with this. A couple of other websites I wanted to pick on. Wanted to quickly show you in the Azure portal. So if you're in the Azure portal and you go to the Quick Start Center, there's a set of setup guides there, and you can see really that it's kind of in tune with the adopt phase of CAF, that we've got these 2 areas. Migration guide, innovation guide. It really gives you a good set of principles, like step-by-step guidance, as it says there on the screen, of what you might really be looking at, what things might you want to look at going forward. So if I click on one, really it's just a little bit of a step-by-step guide. So prepare for customer feedback, get a log analytics workspace, get some application insight set up, democratize your data. If you've got common data sets across your business, put them in the common data framework, the common data area. So, things like Power BI, all your business can get access to these things in one hit. Loads of good information, good tips and good best practices that you can really leverage. That's in the Azure portal. So like I say, if you just log in, go to the Quick Start Center, you've got some great guides there. Just wanted to call those out on this meet. I want to call out Microsoft Learn as well. I mean, I've always been an avid lover of the Learn website, but Microsoft have done absolute wonders with this over the past year or so, I guess. I mean, it's even got, you know, learning modules in there on Learn about the business value of Microsoft Azure, which ties very much in with what you're trying to achieve with CAF. But for anybody that doesn't use Learn and you're working with Azure or you're going to work with Azure, get on it. There's some absolutely fantastic content. I mean, as Anna pointed out earlier on, I sat one of the Azure exams only this week, and I base a lot of my reskilling or re-updating of my knowledge, should I say, on the Learn modules, because look, we know how quickly Azure is changing. The exams are keeping pace as best they can at the moment, and Microsoft are doing an absolutely fantastic job with keeping those learning modules up to date. So Microsoft Learn, if you don't know about it and you don't use it, get on that. Yeah, quickly, this is the tools. Yeah, that's just the general CAF website. So this is really the meat behind everything that I've just said there. This is the Cloud Adoption Framework sort of center, really, that gives us those Microsoft Docs areas to really start asking those questions, understand how we plan for things like this. So if I were to pick, for argument's sake, I won't pick landing zones. Let's go back to our strategy, motivations. How do we start looking at that as a business? Go to this CAF site, click on the links, read. Microsoft have put in there, like I say, all of this information has really come from Microsoft doing these implementations themselves. They've spoken with partners. They've really got real world scenarios, and they've listened. They've taken all that feedback back in to produce the CAF, really to give back to everybody. So have a read. Like I say, all the links will be in the slide deck, and you should be able to get access to that. So that was a quick overview of, bear with, let me get the slide back up. That was a quick overview of a couple of the tools that you've got accessible to you in CAF. Like I said earlier, and I called it out already, skills readiness, really get on to Learn. I can't shout about it enough. It's there's some brilliant things, and I know we've got some guys from some of the other user groups on watching us now, and I'm sure they'll contest to that as well. So get on it, have a look around. If you've not used it yet, then you're missing out. It's really good information in there. And finally, you know, sometimes you can't do this alone. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to learn, there's so much to do, there's so much that you can do, and there's so much that you might not know. So what do you do? So this is where partners come in. So if you need to reach out to a partner, you can do it through the Azure portal. You can speak to your Microsoft account managers. They can direct you, or just look around. You know, there's plenty of partners out there with really good specialities or really good generalist things that will help you formulate an overarching project that will, you know, kind of help you get those migrations in the cloud, right down to really specialist partners out there that will look at things like, you know, SAP for Azure and really specific things that you might want to run in Azure. So there's a link there to how to find a partner. But like I say, if you're managed by a Microsoft account team, reach out to your partner manager and no doubt your account manager, no doubt they can really fill you in on some of that. Okay, so next steps and a couple of resources, some key ones. Like I say, you'll get access to these slides. So Cloud Adoption Framework, aka.ms/adopt, Microsoft Learn. I'm saying Learn too much, but you can't have too much of Learn. The Azure Architecture Center, there's a link for that. Get on there. There's some really great architecture reference diagrams on there with ideas and solutions and ways that you might want to spin up some infrastructure in Azure. And like I say, really look at those foundational services like the Azure Quick Start in there, and they're all available through the Azure portal. And on that note, I think I brought us back onto time. We've got 7:05. Thank you. I don't know, I've not really been paying attention to any of the questions. Anna, Griff, were there any questions that come through as we were doing that, or are we all good?
You're all good, mate. All
good? Cool. Well, like I say, if there's any questions you want to reach out, feel free, join the group. We'll put the link back up. Most of you have obviously seen it. That's fantastic. So on that note, I think I'm going to hand over to
hang on a minute. John, before you do that, can I just ask everyone to come off mute for a minute and say thank you and applaud for John for a great talk?
Woo!
Woohoo!
Yes,
No
John.
problem.
Well done.
I don't know if you can see me. I tell you what, I feel like I'm in mission control here with all these laptops, but you know, no problem at all. Really keen to get on with this group, and I think just a point to add from my own personal perspective. I live at just the bottom of the valley, so I'm up in Newbridge. Really keen to kind of keep this group running and really get any questions or interest areas, get them out there. As soon as we're out of this COVID situation, we can meet up for a beer and a pint. Beer and a pizza. I think I'm not the only one saying that. I'll be all over that. So I'm really looking forward to kind of getting to know everybody in this group a bit more. Want to grow it as best we can. Yeah, thanks for joining. And on that note, you're going to have some more great information thrown your way now with enterprise landing zones. With Chris Whitehead from Microsoft. Chris, are you there? You good to take over?
I am, yes. Thanks
Perfect.
very much. Okay, let me share my screen.
You should be able to just share straight off mine. You should be able to kick me off there.
Okay, just to make sure everyone, can you see that?
Yeah, all good.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks very much, John. So yeah, my name's Chris Whitehead. I'm a CSA at Microsoft. I work closely with both Anna and Matt, who are also on the call. And my background is software development. So I work in the apps and infrastructure space of Azure. And I was asked to join this session today. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Just to give you a really high level view of what Azure Enterprise Scale is. I think I've got around about 30 minutes, so this will be quite high level, and there's a lot to Enterprise Scale, but hopefully I'll give you enough in this session for you to ask questions, want to know more about it, and go and explore, really. So without ado, let's get going. So what is Enterprise Scale? Okay, so really the basis behind Enterprise Scale is a reference architecture. We as Microsoft get asked the question, how do we do landing zones in Azure? And more importantly, how do we do them at scale in Azure? And that question is asked over and over again. So Enterprise Scale has come about to try to address that particular question. It is, as I say, it's a reference architecture, and it's been developed internally within Microsoft by technical CSAs, resources, engineers, and I suppose the comfort is that everything in Enterprise Scale has been vetted by Microsoft engineering. So all those clever people over in Redmond engineering, you know, they've all had a look at this, they've had an input to this, and it's been vetted by them. So you can be assured that the recommendations and best practices that we present as part of Enterprise Scale has kind of gone through the Microsoft engine, if you like. Other areas that key to this, adaptable, accommodate many requirements. You know, things in Azure, when you deploy resources in Azure, they're not all the same. One size doesn't fit all. So Enterprise Scale tries to address that to make sure that we have a common platform. Accelerating onboarding, you know, you deploy many applications to Azure. They may be PaaS services, they may be VM services, IaaS services, Kubernetes, containers, you name it, we've got it. And again, Enterprise Scale is there to give you that common platform to run all those innovative applications that you may be developing or even migrating from elsewhere. It's a consistent policy-based framework, and I think it's homing on the word policy there. That's really key to Enterprise Scale, and we'll delve into policy more as I talk through this. And again, as I say, policy, it's 100% built on native Azure tooling. So everything in Enterprise Scale is 100% Azure, right from you know, the policies, the networking, the tools that we use, DevOps, etc., etc. Okay, so John's just done a really good overview of CAF. So how does Enterprise Scale fit into CAF? And John alluded to this when he was doing his talk just now. Enterprise Scale is very much at the ready stage of CAF. So, you know, as John mentioned, CAF has many pillars, one of which is called ready. I always consider the ready pillar to be the technical pillar. And Enterprise Scale fits firmly inside that pillar and addresses the technical questions about deploying landing zones to Azure. So that's where, if you're looking at CAF and you're going to exploring CAF, this is the area that enterprise scale fits into CAF. And when we talk about enterprise scale, and we'll have a look at this later when I finish the slides, we talk about the 8 critical design areas. It's everything around enterprise scale is formed around these 8 design areas, and these design areas range from setting up your enterprise agreement enrollment, your Active Directory tenants, all the way through to automation and DevOps and everything in between. So when we talk about enterprise scale, we're not just talking about deploying virtual networks, express routes, virtual machines, etc., etc. What we're actually talking about is the whole thing end to end. And the whole thing actually goes all the way back up to your enterprise enrollment. How have you structured that? Your departments, your account owners, your Active Directory tenants, how have you organized that? Obviously, identity, management groups and subscriptions. When we all know that when we put stuff into Azure, we have to have subscriptions. So what's your subscription structure? And as I say, all the way down to automation and DevOps. So we all love DevOps, and DevOps is the future, and how we deploy our resources to the cloud. So why is enterprise scale any different? And enterprise scale has its input into DevOps. Okay. Having said that, what I want to draw your attention to is management groups, because management groups is the central part of enterprise scale. Everything revolves around management groups, and we use management groups to deploy policies. So key to enterprise scale, and that's why I've highlighted. And again, we'll look at this in more detail in a minute. Okay, so I've just said management groups and policies. Enterprise scale is very much policy driven. It's at its heart. Why are we using policies? We want to use policies to basically enforce organizational standards. Every organization is different, has its different standards, has its different ways of wanting to do things. And one way that we can give that consistent view is by using policies. But we need to be able to do it at scale. Where if you're just starting to go into Azure, you may be looking and going, okay, how do I deploy my first virtual network, or where do I get started putting stuff into Azure? Enterprise scale will help you with those questions, and it will help you start off very small and then mature that over time. On the other end of the scale, you might be an organization that's been using Azure for some time, and you've already got quite a high presence in Azure. And you're looking to say, well, okay, how can we improve our scalability of what we've got? How do we help that? And again, enterprise scale can help you address those questions. So what we're really talking about is, things like resource consistency. We want to make sure that every resource that we deploy to Azure is consistent, it's governed or similarly. We haven't got things that are kind of off kilter, or not consistent with what we as an organization want our resources to look and operate. Regulatory compliance is another big one. Different organizations, depending on where you are, you'll have regulatory compliance. If we're talking about banks, for example, financial services, they will be highly regulated. So we need to make sure that whatever we're hosting in the cloud is governed by regulatory compliance, and we have policies that out of the box will ensure that your deployments meet certain regulations. Security, massive one. Everyone loves security. We all need to make sure that it's one thing deploying our resources to Azure, but we have to make sure that we're doing it secure, and when they're actually running in Azure, we've got confidence that security is wrapped around it. Cost is another one, another key feature. We all know that Azure is great, cloud is great, and if we're given freedom, we can deploy all sorts of lovely things to Azure, and we can quite easily spin up quite a high cost if that's not governed. And policies is a way of centrally governing not only the resources, the security, but also making sure that we can keep track of costs. So that we don't overspend, and we don't get that doesn't run away with us. And then I suppose the last pillar is management. We need to be able to manage our Azure infrastructure, our estate. There's many ways of doing that, but policy has given us a very central view of governance and management. So by using policies, we can bring it all together under one umbrella, and we can ensure that just by deploying our policies and centrally managing them, we have governance across Azure, no matter what applications are running, etc., etc. So enforcing organizational standards at scale is key for policy usage. Okay, so we might be sitting there. I know, and I'm sure many people on this call know what a policy is, but basically, what is a policy? We said, okay, policies do all this wonderful stuff, but what actually is a policy? Well, at its root, at its core, it's really two things. It's an if-then statement. That's basically what a policy is. We have an if statement, we have a condition. So if condition A, B, C are met, then we do whatever it is that's inside the then statement. But inside the then statement, we have what we call effects. So we might have a deny effect. So a good example of a deny effect would be maybe our policy is saying, well, okay, I want you, I'm happy for you to deploy resources to Azure, but I only want you to be able to deploy them to say UK South or UK West. If you try and deploy them anywhere else, that's going to breach this particular policy, this particular bit of governance, and we will block you from doing that. So that's where a typical use of deny would come in. We have other effects, which I won't go into too much detail, but you can see there's a number there. But the one that we'll see quite often when it's regarding enterprise scale is deploy if not exist. Deploy if not exists is quite a crucial effect that you'll see. And as you onboard to enterprise scale and maybe start playing around with it and deploying it, you'll see deploy if not exists quite a lot in a lot of the policies that get deployed as part of enterprise scale. Okay, so why deploy if not exists? Okay, enterprise scale loves deploy if not exists. Well, deploy if not exist is basically saying that we will allow resources to be deployed, but then on top of that, if there's certain criteria that we want those resources to be met, we can use a deploy if not exist to basically add on that extra bit. So on this screen, we can see 3 examples of where maybe deploy if not exist can be used, and these 3 are being used in enterprise scale. So configure new resources with diagnostic settings. As a developer, my background's development. I'm a developer at heart. I know as a developer what I want to do is deploy my web apps. I want to be able to deploy my databases and stuff. I want to get things running. I'm creative. I'm not necessarily worried about ensuring all that governance, that monitoring, that logging is also switched on, because I just want to get my application running. So a good example of deploy exist is, okay, well, developer, you go ahead and deploy your web apps, deploy your database. But as a governance team that's elsewhere in your organization, I'm going to deploy this policy to make sure that actually behind the scenes, once your resource is deployed, it falls under the governance that we want with diagnostic settings such as login, monitoring metrics, and that sort of thing to a central workspace, for example. Enabling Security Center on subscriptions, configuring VMs with backup. Again, all good examples. So if you deploy a virtual machine, we want to make sure that virtual machine is being backed up. So, as a developer, I may not be too worried about that, but as a governance team in an organization or as a central IT team, we do want to make sure that all the VMs are being backed up. So we can use deploy if not exist to enforce that. So to continue on with deploy exist, so yeah, why do we use it? It's embedded into ARM. So I've already said that enterprise scale is 100% native Azure. So Azure, as probably everyone knows, we've got ARM, Azure Resource Manager. Deploy if not exist policies there by their very nature embedded into ARM. And what this means is that once we've got our policies deployed and they're sitting there and they're overseeing the governance of our Azure estate, that when the application teams or the developers are deploying their applications to Azure, they may not be using ARM. They may be using Terraform, for example, or CLI or some other tool that they're they're comfortable with to deploy their resources. But what it's meaning is that actually behind the scenes, our policies are still taking care of all that governance and that assurance of our deployments, even though the application development deployments aren't necessarily using ARM, such as Terraform. And again, compliance. We need to be able to compliance. So policies fit very nicely into our compliance reporting. So we can see at a glance what resources are compliant and what resources are not compliant and take the necessary action. Okay, so policies, as I say, are crucial to enterprise scale. So I thought what I'd do here is just put a few links. If you haven't played around with policies or you're interested in policies, these are some really good links to get you started. And even if you have got quite a lot of knowledge in policies, again, these links are good because they offer you some areas where you can find pre-built policies, so authored by Microsoft. But an important part is this is the bottom one. We're talking about enterprise scale. As part of the enterprise scale deployment, we do deploy some policy definitions. So out of the box, you get policy definitions that we feel as Microsoft are a good set of policies that you should be using as part of enterprise scale and as part of your Azure estate as you get it up and running and mature it. Okay, so given that, how do we get started? So I've kind of really given a high-level view of enterprise scale there, but how do we get started? It's all quite theoretical. So as we've already said, enterprise scale is part of CAF. So the first point really is to go to the documentation, and I've put some links here for the documentation. The top one is the high level, what is enterprise scale. Within that documentation, there's lots of information that you can read and digest, but I've picked out sort of 3 that I feel are important and probably a good place to get started. The high level architecture, so we'll take a look at that in a minute. So it basically gives you what is enterprise scale, the high level architecture. The design principles behind enterprise scale, why are we doing this? What's Microsoft's design principles for doing this? And we've already mentioned the 8 critical design areas. So again, the 8 critical design areas in more detail. What exactly are they? How do we do it? What's the best practices recommendations? And then at the bottom there, I put the GitHub. So Enterprise Scale has a GitHub repository, and inside there is all sorts of good stuff about, well, one about how to deploy an enterprise scale. There's tutorials, there's examples, as you would expect in any GitHub repository. So I'll come out of PowerPoint now. That's the end of PowerPoint, which I'm sure you're pleased to know. So let's go into some of this in more detail. So if I flip over to the browser, so I've said, enterprise scale is part of CAF documentation. So here we are in CAF documentation, and where you'll actually find it is here, start with enterprise scale, and on the overview page. So this page gives you the starting point. Okay, but the areas that I mentioned on my previous slide is particularly architecture. So let's take a look at architecture, and actually inside here, there's a really, really good diagram which basically gives you what enterprise scale is, and it's this diagram here. Now this is quite a detailed diagram, but you can see that enterprise scale is not just landing zones. When we talk about landing zones in the context of enterprise scale, what we're actually talking about is a small subsection which is situated down here. We consider the landing zone to be the infrastructure that hosts the application. So the virtual network, the subnets, etc. How is that structured? But actually, that is linked to the bigger picture of what enterprise scale is. And enterprise scale, we've already said, the 8 design principles or the 8 design critical areas. We start with the enterprise enrollment at the top. We then move on to identity and access management, which very much fits into Azure Active Directory. How do we create that? We go around the outside, we've got identity, we've got management, we've got connectivity, we've got the landing zone that we've just spoken about, and then we've got sandboxes. And you'll see right in the middle is the management group. So the reason, on my previous slide, I put a red box around management group and I said that is core to enterprise scale. You can see why, because it sits right in the middle, and actually it's the thing that connects everything together. So management groups is our hierarchy, and management groups is where we basically deploy our policies. And we said that our policies is our mechanism for, one, governance, security, but also our policies, because we're using deploy if not exist, is our mechanism to actually deploy all the bits and pieces that make up enterprise scale. And we can see, let's take, for example, under platform management, we've got under each of the leaf management groups, we've got our subscriptions. So we use subscriptions as, subscriptions, we call it subscription democratization. So subscriptions is our boundary of where we put things. So we need a subscription. So we can see under each of these management groups, we have a subscription, and each subscription has its designated use. We have an identity subscription, management, connectivity. So let's take a look at management, for example. Under management subscription, we can see under here, we've got, this is where we have our login, our centralized workspace that holds all our login metric data. This is where we create our dashboards, our alerting. Maybe we have our automation accounts in here and our dashboards. So from a management perspective, this is where people who are interested in that in an organization, this is their world, they would sit in here. If we move across to connectivity, then this is, from an infrastructure point of view, this is where it gets really interesting, because this is where we start to implement our networking, our virtual WANs, our hub spoke topologies, our DNS, private and public zones, our VNet peering. And actually the landing zone, we have many subscriptions, and then under each of those is where we actually host the applications. And inside there, we have virtual networking and everything that we need to host an application. So you can see that enterprise scale is not just a landing zone. Enterprise scale is a whole end-to-end Azure estate. And the idea is, we can start off small. If you're only just starting to go into Azure and you're saying, well, okay, how do I start in Azure? What do I do? Then enterprise scale is going to give you the starting point and the building blocks to get you up and running. And the important thing is you start off small. You don't have to do a big bang. Everything has to be in place. Start off small, implement what you need to implement. But regardless, the central point of whatever you implement is going to be our management groups and our policies. And then as you mature, you build out and you build out and you build out the policies. You build more policies, you adapt your policies, you implement more policies. And it becomes, as we said over here in DevOps, enterprise scale becomes part of DevOps in the same way that you would do DevOps for your individual applications. Enterprise scale has its DevOps requirements and needs as well. Okay, so given that, I just want to just quickly move on. So I spoke about the critical design areas. Here's the critical design areas, and here are the 8 that I had in my my slide. And we can see if I click on this one here, for example. Yeah, you can see that all of these critical design areas, they're structured in the same way, and what they're aimed to do, given the title of what they are, you'll see that they're structured in the same way. So we have design consideration, things that you need to consider when you're thinking about each of these areas. Recommendations, so these are recommendations from us, Microsoft, these recommendations are kind of been born out of our experiences. We work with many, many customers. We've seen all sorts of ways of Azure being used, and what we've done is we've collated all that information and we've refined it and we've given it as a series of recommendations. So that reading this, you can see, okay, these are recommendations that Microsoft are saying, so they're good to go. It doesn't mean, as I say, it's a framework, so it's not hard and fast. There's going to be things that you're going to need to adapt, but at a base level, these are what we consider out of the box recommendations. So what I want to do is leave this picture on the screen here because, I said that this is core to enterprise scale. And I quickly want to flip over to the GitHub repository, which is here. So inside the GitHub repository, there's many, many things in here, examples, but what I want to home in on is the deploy to Azure. So, if you're starting out and you're going, well, okay, this is all very good, but how do I get it into my Azure account? Where do I start? What we're offering here is a quick one-click deployment to Azure. So if I click this link here, for example, what you'll actually see is this will take you to your portal like we're used to, and it will bring you into this custom deployment area. And this is a really quick way of getting up and running. Okay, and what we're going to do in this particular scenario is we're going to work through creating this management group, saving the policy definitions to our root group, and then looking at the specifically the management pillar here, and how we can get that up and running. Okay, so I'm inside the custom deployment. You can see across the top the headers that I'm going to go through. So the first thing I need to do is my basics. So where am I going to put my enterprise scale? We're all used to picking our region, so I'll go UK South. And then what I wanted to do in this pillar, I'm particularly interested in the management group hierarchy. So what this is going to say is, well, I'm going to build out this for you. This is what I'm going to build out, but please tell me what the name of your company is. So in this example, we've got Contorso. What we're saying here is please say what you want to prefix that with. I'm just going to say ES2 for now. Then I'm going to go on to the next one. And this is the area where it says, well, okay, right, I'm going to build out your management groups. Inside the management groups, I'm going to have all the policies. But you also have the opportunity now to build out that management subscription, that pillar that we saw in the previous diagram. So this particular area here. So I'm going to elect to say, yes, I want to do that. And I'm going to put on, say, Visual Studio. So remember in that diagram, we said under each of the pillars, we've got these different subscriptions because that's our boundary, that's our democratization. So we're going to have a management subscription here. So I'm going to elect that this subscription is my management subscription. And then I'm going to say, okay, for that, because it's going to deploy the workspace, what solutions do I also want? Azure Monitor solutions do I also want to deploy? And I can say yes or no to any of these just to get me started and out of the box and get me up and running. I'll then go on to the next one. For this one, this is the landing zone. So this is very much building out a particular pillar here. So for this, I'm just going to leave this as blank. So I'm not going to build out the landing zone. I still get the management group for landing zones, but I'm not going to put a subscription under it. I'm not going to build out anything out. And then I go to review and create. It'll do a quick validation as we're all used to, and then we click create. So in the interest of the time, I have already done this. So if I now go, once I've clicked create, if I go to management groups and I go to ES2, we can see here is my management groups, the landing zones, platforms, sandboxes. It's very much in line with what we're seeing here. And if I go into management, for example, platform, sorry, if I go into there and then I go into management, here's my subscription that we're seeing. So here's my management subscription that we've got here. So you can see it's built all this out. Okay, so that's great. So I've got my management group. So let's go back up to my root management group and go into the details and say, well, okay, everything's built on policies. So show me the policies. So let's go into policies and the definitions. And if I filter that down by custom, we can see here are all the policies that Enterprise Scale has deployed me. Has deployed me as the definitions, okay? And we can see they're all bound to the scope of the ES root. So they're all bound to the root level, which is Contorso in this diagram. So great, so we got the policies as well. But okay, what I also elected to do was to set up my management subscription. So how has that worked? Okay, so let's go back to the management groups and drill down into platform management, because that's where our subscription is. Okay, and let's look at the policies at that level. And in particular, what we're interested in is the assignments of the policies. So we can see that we've got 3 policy assignments that are at root level. So that's across the whole of the management group hierarchy. But this one here is specific to ES management. So let's take a look at the definition of that. And if we look at the definition of that, we can see that actually what that is doing is taking a number of parameters, but if we get to the detail of it, scroll down, we can see, where is it? First of all, in our then, we can see this is a deploy if not exist. We've just been speaking about that, so that's great. And actually what this is going to do is take in a number of parameters, and it will deploy a couple of things. It will deploy a resource group, obviously, because we need a resource group. It will deploy an automation account, and it will also deploy a log analytics workspace, because our management subscription is all about centralized logging and automation. And if you think of the diagram that we had for management, if I just quickly flip back, what time? Running out of time. Oops, if I go back to the architecture diagram. We said that the management subscription, if we follow that line, is all about log analytics workspace and automation account. So this is what it's going to deploy. So, okay, so that looks like that's what it's deploying. So did it actually deploy it? If I go to home resource groups, and I can see my resource group, here's an ES2 management, so that looks promising. And here it is. So here we can see there's my log analytics workspace, there's my automation account, and all those tick boxes for the Azure Monitor solutions, I tick them all on. So you can see I've also got all that lovely solutions as well that I can use as part of my management capabilities. So you can see that that has completely built out. Not only that one-click deployment has built out this entire management group hierarchy, it's uploaded the policy definitions to the root. And because at that particular point, I elected to build out my management subscription and everything that I need for it, it's also built out within the subscription that I told it to the automation account workspace IDs, but also applied or assigned the relevant policies that I need at my management level to make sure that all that is in place and is working well. Okay, I realize I'm probably just running out of time. So that is a really, really quick view of how you can get started. What I wanted to do as well, but I think I've run out of time, there's other areas as well. So as well as doing the basic management group, you can also use what we call reference implementation. So we've got these 3 different reference implementations. And actually, if you go into, say, this top one, what this will allow you to do is everything I've just shown you, but on top of that, it will also enable you to build out this particular pillar, the connectivity, and in particular, the virtual WAN. So what that will actually build you, and I have run it earlier, it will build you an ES or connectivity subscription. And inside there, you will see that you will get a virtual WAN. And inside the virtual WAN, we'll have a virtual hub to get us started. So in the same way we built out the management subscription, we can repeat that pattern and build out a connectivity subscription. So you can see in a really quick half an hour, in a few clicks, what I've managed to do inside my Azure subscription and my tenant is build out the management groups, upload the policies, configure policy assignments where applicable, and because of those policy assignments, it's then built out the necessary resources in the respective subscriptions that sit under those management groups. And likewise, we do similar for the landing zones, sandboxes, and identity as well. Brilliant. So given that, that was basically what I wanted to show you. I realized that, as I say, enterprise scale is quite large. There's a lot to it. I would encourage you to go to the documentation and start reading through that, because that's what's going to give you the information. And also have a play of that one-click deployment, because that will actually make it real for you. You'll start to see things actually happen inside your Azure subscription and be able to start playing around with the policies, etc. So given that, I think I'm about 5 minutes over, so I do apologize for that. But thank you very much for listening to me. I hope that was useful, and I'm happy to take any questions, either verbally or on the chat.
I think we've got a couple in the chat window there, Chris. That's brilliant. Right, I'll read them out to you now. I think Paul has jumped in. Right, we've got a question from Paul Grimley. So he's, right, where have we gone? Why does my screen move? Right, can you use deploy if not exist to configure logging if someone was to create a key vault?
Chris, just to clarify, it wasn't me who asked the question. I wouldn't want to heckle you. It was
sorry, Paul Comstock. Paul Grimley actually answered Paul Comstock. Sorry, Paul.
Okay.
It's probably worth for the recording, just playing it back though, Chris. I have answered it, but you're welcome to.
Okay. How did you contradict what you've said? So let's take a look. So I would, under this option, yes, you can.
So there's a number of policies in Azure Policy that are deployed as part of enterprise scale, Paul, that you can use is the answer. So Key Vault was one of them, but there's all sorts of policies that you can just tag on, and those extra policies are deployed as part of enterprise scale, which is what Chris just run through that deployment.
Yeah, so that's the key point of deploy if not exists. So it's going to take your resource that you've deployed and then basically add extra stuff to it. So yes, that's generally how it works. So I'm just looking down the list if there's any more.
There's one more from Martin there, I think, Chris. Would you recommend enterprise scale for organizations of all sizes or just the enterprises?
Okay, so yeah, I would say it fits also. Obviously, the starting point of enterprise scale, we spoke about the enterprise agreement. That's quite, as the name suggests, that's quite enterprises. But yeah, it's a full end-to-end framework. And as I think the key thing to take away from this, it is a framework. It's not this is the way to do it and the only way to do it. It's a framework that's there to help you. And as I say, if you're just starting out, you can easily do what I've just demonstrated to get yourself up and running. Really, really simple. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're an enterprise, a large enterprise, and you've been in Azure for some time, you may be looking at this and thinking, well, we've already got a hub spoke topology, we've got subscriptions, we may or may not use management groups, or we don't use policies. So it's a really good way to maybe do a gap analysis on what you've got. And if there's areas that kind of come out of this and you think, well, yeah, we should address that, then it's a good way of addressing that as well. So it can be used on both ends of the spectrum, I think, and everything in between.
Brilliant, Chris, fantastic. Thank you very much for your time today. Yeah, if everyone wants to come off mute and give Chris a quick cheer, thank you very much. Really interesting stuff there, Chris.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Cool. Okay. Well, I tell you what we'll do. We'll have a quick 5-minute break. Everybody go and grab a cuppa. We'll let Richard Griffiths get set up now. 5 minutes. I'll stick a timer up on the screen. If everybody wants to head back then, and we'll catch up with Richard and start looking through some blueprints. Bear with. I'll just get us a timer so we know where we are. Right. Okay, guys. Are we all back? I think if we are. Griff, you there? Do you want to take control of the screen?
I am here, and I will share my desktop.
Go for it. The floor is yours.
Whoop. It's going to be interesting. Everyone see the screen? Or I'll just ask John.
Yeah, you're all good, Griff.
Cool, excellent. Okay, here we go. So this falls on nicely actually from what Chris was just showing, and I'm hopefully going to be doing a bit of demo of how we can deploy a data infrastructure with blueprints. Sorry, everyone. Yeah, I'm Richard Griffiths, or Griff. Some of you probably know me. I'm Data Solutions Architect at Confused.com. So today we're going to cover what is an Azure blueprint. We're going to quickly demo the creation of a basic one. We're going to touch on policies, funnily enough, the stuff Chris was talking about. So we're going to see some of them in action. How we can orchestrate blueprints with PowerShell, and some demos there. I'm going to take a quick tour of the data blueprint that I've decided to create, and how you can use YAML pipelines to deploy the blueprint as well. So basically the goal that I was aiming for is a completely packaged up set of code that you can just deploy a modern data estate, and we'll talk about that as we go through, and hopefully just to satisfy all the sort of applications that come along then that want to use the data blueprint. I'll have a demo of how that could occur at the end as well. But wait, I've got to stop right here because the builds I'm going to run are going to take too long to fit in into the entire talk. So I just need to jump to one side and then come back to this later. And yeah, basically, like I was saying, can we make an entire secure modern data estate in 10 minutes? Yes, we can. And basically all you need is an Azure subscription and an Azure DevOps account. That's all you need. So hopefully this will inspire anyone who hasn't used Azure or uses Azure to just go, oh, in 10 minutes, I can have something to play with. And I mean literally an infrastructure. So I think it's really cool. And oh yeah, and it even includes Active Directory as well. So this is the first thing that we're going to do. So what I promised that I would do is do a bit of sort of there's nothing up my sleeve kind of thing. I'm using my MSDN subscription. So there's a couple of AD groups there that I use for other things that that I use. But as you can see, AD is fairly empty. I'm going to go to my dashboard, resource groups. Ignore the ones at the top. I need to keep those. I wasn't going to delete them for you lot. Sorry. I need them for my learning, so they're staying there. But imagine this is an empty subscription. And you can see there's not much in there. And if I look at policies as well, absolutely nothing. So you need to close your eyes and imagine you've got an empty subscription and an Azure DevOps account. But before we start, hopefully people can continue seeing my screen. There's just a tiny bit of manual code I'm going to run. Where have I put it? Oh no, deploy, sorry. Publish AD groups. So the way they've set this up, I've got, you'll see this at the end, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 resource groups to do with data, 3 different functions and 3 different environments. Dev, UAT, and prod. You can either be an owner, contributor, or a reader, and that applies to all the resource groups that are going to be made. So I'm just going to run this. And hopefully I don't get anything to block me. I probably should have done this before I did my spiel, but that's going off now into my Active Directory. I should find, oh, he says, should find some groups being created. Do a hard refresh, because I will weep otherwise. Phew. Mild panic there, just a bit of a delay. So you can see that there's a dev AZRG data lake own group being set up. So that'll continue for 3 environments and for all the different resource groups that are going to be created. Just going to wait for this to finish. I promise all of this will make sense by the end, I hope. I just wanted to go from start to finish of how this is all going to work. Cool. So all the AD groups are there. I'm going to go to Azure DevOps, and I'm going to say, right, here's my blueprint pipeline. And just to also prove this sort of no sort of GUI interface, I've got a very, very simple YAML pipeline. I'm a little bit better at these now, so this is like one of the first iterations of it. But basically, you can see it's all in code. You don't have to go and configure PowerShell tasks, anything like that. It's all there, nothing up my sleeve. So all I'm going to do is run that pipeline. So all we've done, created some Active Directory groups and run a pipeline. Cool. That might mean not much at the moment, but we're going to revisit this later. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, okay. So what is an Azure blueprint? It's, for me, it sort of defines your skeleton infrastructure, and that's resource groups, RBAC, policies, which are collectively called artifacts. So one of the nice things I found about the idea behind the data estate, once I deployed all the skeleton resources for it, cost nothing. So even though I've got things like Event Hub namespaces and Databricks accounts, because when you use a modern data estate, you separate your compute from your storage, you're basically not paying for anything until you start using it. So while we were building our infrastructure, our shared infrastructure, it cost nothing. So it was great to get all your connectivity together and just go, yep, this all works. All our resources are there. Now wait for applications to come along and deploy on top of them. So the blueprints for me were just your shared skeleton infrastructure. And they've been created using multiple methods. We're going to walk through the baby steps in the portal in a minute, and that's how I started as well. And then use PowerShell, and you can use the Azure CLI as well. Most of the work I've done is in PowerShell because that's what I'm comfortable with. The code output then from a blueprint is just a collection of ARM templates, really. And the policies in RBAC as well are also in JSON. And the sort of development lifecycle behind a blueprint is basically, obviously, you develop one, and you publish it, and then you assign it to a subscription or management group. I should have there. Ah, yeah, got at the bottom. So a blueprint can be, no, it's assigned to a subscription. That is right. A blueprint can be scoped to a subscription or a management group. So that's what Chris touched on earlier. So a management group can have multiple subscriptions underneath it, and you can just apply the same blueprint from a management group down across all of them. Okay. Oop. So here we go, creating a basic blueprint demo, and this is going to be all in the GUI, so this is a little bit scary for me. Let's see what happens. Blueprints. Oh, I feel like I need to go back to the beginning, sorry. So I tend to use the search bar quite a bit these days, so search for blueprints in your portal, go there, blueprint definitions. Good, that's the one that's just been created by the build, but what we're going to do is create a blueprint. And we're going to start with a blank blueprint, and I'm just going to call it demo blueprint. This is the Welsh Azure user group demo. And when we define the location of the blueprint, you can see it can either be at the management group level, or we can choose a subscription. I'm just going to choose a subscription for this because I've only got one MSDN anyway. So select that. And then we click next. And we're going to pick some artifacts. So you add an artifact, and I'm just going to pick a resource group, and I will just call it demo. Actually, I call it BP demo RG1. And basically, the resource group name you can either set at the start, which I'm going to do for this one. So that will mean it's basically hard coded. And I'm going to say the location's in North Europe. And you can also define your tags up front as well. So I tend to say owner, data, and then add. Do that. So I've got my resource group. And now I'm going to add another resource group. And it's going to be blueprint demo RG2. And the resource group name I will set as 2, but I'm going to say this time that the location should be specified when the blueprint is assigned. And we'll see the difference in this when I export the code later. And also when we assign it, basically we'll ask for the location. Tags, add. So we can add resource groups underneath the subscription. Other artifacts are resources, just like we would for ARM templates. So I've got a storage account here somewhere. Manual storage account. So I'm just going to copy this. That in my first resource group. I'm going to add a ARM template, and I'm just going to call it storage account. I'm going to paste that in there. Add. So that storage account will be deployed in that resource group. Just to be fair to the other one, I'm going to add to the other resource group some RBAC. So I'm going to add a role assignment. I'll just say owner. What did I call it? Demo. Yep, phew, I did call it something sensible. So this is something you can do with your sort of traditional ARM templates, is add the RBAC permissions on the resource groups. So I'm going to say role is the owner, and the demo group is the owner of that resource group. And I'm also going to add a policy to this second resource group as well. So these are the things that Chris was talking about. And if I add a policy assignment, so we can say, what do we say? The classic is allowed regions. So I'm just going to go for that one. As you can see, as I'm typing through, there's a huge amount of built-in policies, and we've used a hell of a lot of these, and you'll see some in my data subscription later. But if you think you want rules, Microsoft offer a huge amount. So allowed locations. So allowed locations, there we go. I'm going to click that one, add. And if I go into this policy, I'm going to say I'm only going to allow North Europe and West Europe. And I'm applying that policy at the resource group level. I made a little bit of a faux pas earlier. I added some policies in my demo to the subscription level, which you absolutely you can do, and I have done it for the data sub. But my demo blueprint messed around with my data blueprint, so I'm going to keep the policy in the resource group for now, just to demo it. So once you've got your very basic blueprint in place, and this is, like I said, this is how I started. I save a draft. I try to. Oh, there you go. I'll go into my demo blueprint, and then I'm going to publish it. And I'm just going to call it version 0.1. So the publish has succeeded. So if I go up here now, you can see there's got version 0.1 for that demo. And let's just go back to my dashboard a minute. And you can see that my demo blueprint resource groups don't exist yet. So if I go here and go to my, I'm going to assign this blueprint, and I'm going to put it in North Europe. And you can actually do different locks as well on your blueprint. So you can do not delete and read only. I started playing with these when I first started using blueprints, but I ended up using a custom locking mechanism in the end, because if you put do not delete lock on it, basically you've got to unassign the blueprint and then reassign it afterwards in order to get around the locks. So it's, I found it easier, just a bit of custom PowerShell and put normal locks on it, but that's just me. I just found it a bit easier to control. Manage identity, you can use the system assigned one. So basically that means an identity gets generated to have the permissions to apply your blueprint, because obviously it needs to run as some kind of account in order to create resources and amend them. So you can use that. A user assigned one at confused.com. We actually went for a user assigned one in the end because we get more control over it. But just for messing around, system assigned one is fine, and probably in general it's fine, to be honest. And then we've got our different resource groups. So our blueprint demo RG1, our storage account, and our other resource group and allowed locations. And so some of these need to be completed. So the storage account is an optional parameter. So I'm going to leave it as standard LRS. I'm going to put North Europe as the location. And then I am just going to assign this blueprint. I know this is not the best example of a demo blueprint, but I'm just showing that you can sort of create a small sort of defined infrastructure of resource groups, resources, and policies. Things will become clearer, hopefully, when you see the data one working. So we go to assign blueprints now, and I refresh this. You can see that the demo blueprint is waiting. Click into that. And what will happen in a minute, it'll look very similar to the activity log, as you can see there, for when you're deploying ARM templates. Because there's not much in this, it usually occurs quite quickly, but we shall see. So as that's taken a little bit longer, I'll come back to it and just move to the next part. Okay, blueprints allow you to deploy RBAC, which you can't do with ARM templates. I mentioned that. For those of you who don't know, RBAC is just your role-based access control. So you can add AD groups, as I mentioned, with owner, contributor, or reader access to your resource groups or resources. Policies allow you to control the behavior of your estate. And as I mentioned, this can be done at the resource group level or the subscription level. So you can say if you want particular resource types. So we'll see later, for example, the virtual network resource group. You want to, perhaps keep that to where your networking resources are, and only have networking resources in there. You can make sure that the owner tags are required. Storage account must be on a virtual network. At Confused, we applied a hell of a lot of those on the storage account. So it was, must be behind a virtual network, must have HTTPS enabled, and we put explicit deny policies on those as well, just to make sure that nobody could actually get around those. And what I found was if you add some pester testing to this, along with the policies, then you're getting towards a bulletproof infrastructure. So even though I come from a dev background, I sympathize heavily with infrastructure people, because I know how much of a terrible dev I can be. But when you mix the infrastructure and dev stuff, it's really good, because I felt like I was a developer developing infrastructure, and when you're using policies and pester, it's great because you're putting everything in code. So it's really useful. Cool. The assignment has succeeded, and you can see we've got our 2 resource groups, our storage account in one of them, and our RBAC for our owner. So if I go back to the dashboard and we look at blueprint demo org1, that has a storage account made on it. And we look at the blueprint demo 2, there's nothing in that one, but we can see that we've got our RBAC should be set up. Let me just find you. Demo BP group has been added as the owner, so you've got all that in there, which is great. I've just got to remind myself now which one I added the policy to. Demo blueprint, I put it on. Okay, I'm going to go back and have a look at the definition, so I can go in here, have a look at my artifacts. There we go. This is the second resource group I put the allowed locations on. It's a very quick demonstration of what the policy does, and this touches on what Chris was saying. So if I only want resources created in North Europe and West Europe, or only in the UK, and you want to stop other naughty devs creating things in the US because sometimes they have more compute, hopefully this will stop it now. I think I put deny. We'll see now. So Griff bad storage, cool, globally unique. So East US, review and create. Hoping it'll fail. There we go. Validation failed straight away. So it didn't even try and create it. So there's a policy on the resource group, and it should take us to it. This might actually be the data blueprint policy being assigned, but anyway, either way, there's a policy in place now that looks like this: allowed locations, North Europe and West Europe, and that will just stop people doing anything. So that's a very, very basic demo of what the policies can do. You can imagine if you get loads of those on your estate, only allowed these locations, storage accounts only allowed this, service endpoints only allowed this, you start getting a really robust estate that you can basically allow anyone to deploy into, because you know you're covering all your bases. And we'll see an example of the deploy if not exists in a moment as well that Chris talked about, to make sure that advanced threat protection is on a storage account. Policy, damn it, I've just seen that demo. Anyway, we get to see Alan Partridge really quick. Very, very tenuous link. But anyway, let's go. PowerShell orchestration. So there are a number of commandlets to orchestrate blueprints. And I'm going to show you one in a minute to export the blueprint to code. Let's go straight into that. So export blueprint to code. So the first thing I did with the blueprint was exactly what you just saw, except with a bit more complex estate. I added, took me a long time, probably a best part of an hour in the portal, add in sort of event hubs, data lake, all that kind of things. So I didn't code everything you're going to see in a minute. I didn't code from scratch. This is probably the way to do it because it's quite quick. I will run this. Hopefully, we will get our blueprint that we just created as code. Where did I put it? Example. Please be there. Why haven't you appeared? Oh, because I called it something different this time. Of course I did. Blueprints. My blueprint. Oh, no, I called it the same thing. Damn it. That looks better. Apologies all. I am going to check something. And this is the one part of the demo which has not failed in all of my practices. So what's supposed to happen is supposed to export my blueprint into this example folder. I may have to move on and come back to it. Okay, that's supposed to export the code. I promise you it does work. If I get time at the end, I'm going to have a look and hit you with a hammer, perhaps while people are talking. It exports your blueprint and it puts all of your JSON files into a nice, neat folder for you. But what it doesn't do is name them very nicely. So it puts them all as GUIDs, because obviously you've never actually defined what the files are called. And what I spend a lot of time doing then, because it should look like this, artifacts, and then you get a JSON file. I just went through renaming all of the GUID names into this. So you got your sub-level artifacts and your resource group level artifacts. Okay, and then the deployment of your blueprints, which we'll see in the YAML pipelines in a bit, is done through a combination of just basically those three commandlets you can see there. Is you get as your blueprint assignment, your new as your blueprint assignment, and your set. And there's a tiny bit of secret sauce added to add the AD groups to the blueprint, because what you find in RBAC, so I'll use one of the ones from earlier, what it expects in your parameters for the RBAC JSON files is the principal ID. So that's actually the long GUID name rather than the actual name of the Active Directory group. So it's a little bit tricky. And so the way I sort of got around, well, not even got around that, is when deploying it is based on the AD groups that I've deployed. When you pass in the environment, it just basically loops through and creates a hash table of the AD groups. I should do a shout out here, and my code is actually different. I did a lot of work with a guy called Chris Cha. If I could show you the confused method of all this, it's a lot better than my my homebrewed one. But this does the job anyway. And basically, when you assign your blueprint, so you take the name and subscription ID, and what it does, it just adds the hash table of parameters there. So the only parameters that I'm passing in per environment is the environment name and a set of AD groups. So we'll have a quick look at the data blueprint now, which we've already started to look at. And like I said, what I decided to do was use blueprints to deploy our new modern data architecture. And some of this came about from the Azure Fundamentals exam and reading through like one sentence of what a blueprint was and having an hour, I think, just to go, oh, I'll go have a look at what this is now. And then another hour later, I'd gone, oh, this is our entire data estate quite quickly. So I thought they were great. And I said I want us to try using blueprints because they're just ARM templates in a sort of a neat, structured manner. And even though a lot of the stuff that Chris was talking about were other kind of landing zones, I didn't see why data would be any different. I thought I can use this. And we wanted to, for example, have our data lake to be really secure. So we set up brand new subscriptions to store all of our data. So brand new RBAC, new Active Directory, similar to what you've just seen, and just decided to deploy blueprints into that. Let's have a quick look at what the blueprint looks like in code. So we talked about this earlier. An RBAC is just this very tiny piece of code, and you can see that the parameter gets passed in as RBAC Databricks con. When we look at the central JSON file, you can see how that gets passed in a moment. And then we've got an ARM template. So there's a Databricks one. So all the rest of the files look very, very similar to standard ARM templates, except you've got these two bits that you've got like a sandwich around it. So at this top, you've got what the JSON file is, and you can also say if that resource depends on another resource, and that became quite useful when we had dependencies on things, particularly across resource groups. You can make things wait for one another. And then at the bottom, you've got the name of the resource group, or actually this is not the name, this is the link to the resource group. And we'll see this in the central file in a moment. And the parameters that get passed in centrally as well. So the cool thing about the blueprint is you can quite easily share centralized parameters. So you can see they've got tags, the primary location and the secondary location for all of my resources. So we can see that if we look at the event hub namespace ones as well. We've got the consistent tags for location primary and secondary. And then we've got, let's have a look, some policies at the subscription level. So this is just an audit one, and it just says a virtual network should use a service endpoint. So that'll appear, it won't stop anything from happening, but it'll appear in the policy audits. This one is a deny. So on all the storage accounts across the entire subscription, secure transfer to storage should be enabled. So HTTPS has to be enabled. So you make sure that's in place. And also use a deploy if not exists. So hopefully we'll see this in action in a bit. It's basically saying deploy ATP on any storage account that gets created. So the data lake, for example, that I've got the ARM template for here has nothing about advanced threat protection. We should find when we look at what the data blueprint has deployed that advanced threat protection is enabled because that deploy if not exist. And this is that library of rules that you can build up. Like I say, this is in code in the blueprint at the moment, but you can, if you have, you can put them all at the management group level and just sit all your subscriptions underneath it. So once at the management group level, you have to use them again. But for a portability Git repo point of view, I quite like this because I can just give someone, the data estate in a repo and go deploy this, and you'll get all your policies as well. And so you've got all these artifacts, like I said, RBAC policies and ARM templates. And even though the trick I would say is, even though you might panic and go, oh, I've seen ARM templates that are absolutely monstrous. The trick is with this, it should only be for shared infrastructure. So like I said, you got your event hub namespace, but you don't have your event hubs in your blueprint. You have sort of your NSG, your VNet, maybe a logical SQL server and a resource group ready for databases to be deployed to it. But I think it should be that, I like that idea of it not costing anything, that thin sort of shared skeleton that you want just applications to come along and deploy onto. And then your blueprint JSON. So this is where all your parameters get passed in. And the key ones for me are the environment. And I've said it's just dev, UAT, and prod. So that's what gets passed into the blueprint PowerShell, the set assignment that I showed you earlier. It just goes, right, just do dev, UAT, or prod. And all of the other, like the storage account name, will be a concatenation of the environment. Data lake is the bit in the middle. And then I've got this other one, parameters namespace. So when, I should probably put this on GitHub at some point if I'm allowed, I'm sure it'll be fine. There's a namespace, and mine's just called Griff. So just to make sure that everything that you create is unique, because like storage accounts and namespaces and all that kind of thing, they need to be globally unique. So you can't use Griff, that's mine. Or if you do, I'll use Griff1. But you can quite quickly change it there and just keep all of your resources consistent and consistently named as well. So a lot of these just get defaulted to what you want them to be, just with the environment and namespace changing. And then at the bottom, I've got all the RBAC that I mentioned that gets dynamically got as part of the PowerShell, and then those object IDs get passed in. And the resource groups then at the bottom, so these define, obviously the resource groups and the containers. And I didn't realize this until the other day, and we've done some workarounds in work to get this to work. But basically, you've got your consistent tag that isn't environment aware, and then I've got a parameter which defines the proper name of the resource group, which I can add environment to, which is really useful. And you can add all your tags and your depends on. So this is the bit that I've used depends on here. Where is it? So the data lake resource group will not get deployed until the virtual network resource group has been created. So you can't usually do that in ARM templates. If you want to do a mass deployment to make sure one thing deploys on another, it would all have to be in one. So by breaking these up into their component parts, you can still say, oh, actually, this depends on this. And finally, I think the Databricks one is pretty much the last one that gets deployed because it depends on the VNet, the data lake, and the events resource group. So that's your sort of control file, basically. Yeah, like I said, the key custom parameter, if anyone wants to play with this, is the namespace one. And these central parameters get mapped to each arm. Sorry, I didn't show that very well, probably, did I? Go to the event hub namespace arm. So like I say, at the top, all of that is your standard ARM template, but all of these then are driven from that central blueprint JSON file. So they're consistent across your resources. Yep, and then the set blueprint assignment applies this. Right, so the YAML pipeline, again, doing everything from code. So the pipeline as well as the infrastructure. The only thing that you need from a DevOps point of view is a service connection mapped to an app registration with appropriate permissions on your sub. So going to the, where's my Azure DevOps? There it is. So again, going for that really thin sort of things that you need. Service connections, all you need in there, Griff sub God. So he's got all the powers over this subscription completely. And I think I've just seen that my build failed. It's going to make me very sad. Okay, well, we can do a debugging exercise here to see why my data blueprint has failed. As you can see, it was working earlier. So unfortunately, in the DevOps pipelines, it doesn't actually show you the errors. You've got to go into the portal and have a look. So if we have a look, so the data Griff sub assignment, deployment failed. Update not allowed, the workspace. Oh no. Apologies all, but it looks like that one of my earlier ones hasn't been removed, the shared workspace. That's a bit of a nightmare. Okay, so what I'm going to do is probably move on to the next part. Okay, let's have a look at the YAML pipeline that was created. Yeah, so the pipeline, the YAML pipeline, all this does is publishes the CI blueprint, assigns it, and then publishes it. And these use all the different PowerShell tasks that I mentioned. So it deploys the blueprint and sets the blueprint assignment and then publishes it. And the way this is being created is the build number gets added as the version for the blueprint. So if we go and have a quick look at that. You can see that the data group subassignment has inherited the version from the build pipeline, so you've got that sort of auditability. So CI566 master. And even though that's just failed, which really, really sucks, I'm hoping I'm going to get my point across somehow. You can go from a single code base to an entire data infrastructure quite quickly. Because what we still do have, we'll demo an app using it in a minute. We've got a data lake that is on a virtual network that has been created. So we know that's nice and secure. Secure transfer is required. Advanced threat protection. Let's see if that's been turned on. No, it hasn't. So that hasn't worked out. This is going great. I'm going to kick off the prod environment, and hopefully I won't get any conflicts then with the Databricks. So what I'm going to do is go to my pipelines, change this to be prod. Stage. Cool. That should kick off another pipeline, which I hope will work. Oh, I haven't synced it. Sorry, Owen. Sync that up. Cool, so that's going to run. So I'm attempting to do now, if the demo gods will give me a break, is create another set of resource groups, except instead of dev, you get your prod environment instead. And ultimately that would probably be ideally going to a different subscription, but we'll put them in the same one for now. And if I go into each one of these, if I look at my event hub namespace, I look at access control, we should find that the RBAC has been applied to each of them. So you can see that's got the dev, AZ, edit, RG events contributor group added to it. So all of your RBAC permissions are set up in advance as well, which is good. Okay, so kicked off the deploy prod environment. Now, because we've got our event hub namespaces, what I'm hopefully going to show you is we add an event hub to this. I call it fruit. And I'm going to start capturing this data as well. So I'm going to use our dev data lake. I choose that. So I just need to get my format. So what I'm doing here is create an event hub for an application to send data to and capture it. So if you imagine this would be a separate deploy. Now your application comes along, it deploys an event hub. That's there. And it adds its own access policy. Copy that. And I quickly flip over to an application that's going to start using our estate. Hopefully. Cool. So that's just generating some random data to do with fruit. And I'm hoping this will go to our new Event Hub namespace. Hopefully we'll see some messages get captured in a moment.
Griff, not to cut you off in your prime because I'm following this intently at the minute, but we're pushing on to the 8:30 time at the minute. I'm just concerned if people need to drop off or anything.
Yeah, no, it's coming to an end now.
Cool. Not that I want to push you along because I'm learning too much here at the minute. So
I just need that to start appearing. I'm not getting any errors. I know it can be a little bit behind. What I'll do is see if we've got any of the data being captured in the lake. So I'm going to cross my fingers and have something work. Cool, there we go. So from an application point of view, the data that I'm sending to the Event Hub is being captured. It's not necessarily, I don't think, if I remember right, it's not going to be readable because it's binary. Oh no, it is sort of there. So, and this is what I'll lead to next. So quite quickly, we've got a secure Azure infrastructure that an application can send data to an Event Hub, and from a click of a button, we can capture it. So in our resource groups, we've got, just to reiterate, the data lake we know is secure. This is all behind a virtual network. So the only IP exclusion I've got, in fact, that's another one in the blueprints. There's a custom list there for your IP addresses. So as well as changing your namespace, you change your IP list as well. So you put that in just to make sure that like your home address could access it. It looks like prod has started to deploy. I wonder if that's failed as well. Let's have a look. Yeah, it has. Okay, I'm going to cut my losses. Okay, so we've got an application storing data. We've demonstrated the development lifecycle for a blueprint, just about, even though the Databricks one failed at the end. You can apply this to a modern data estate and you can include Databricks. So like I said, you've got your data lake, your virtual network, your Event Hub namespaces and a Databricks account, and you pretty much got the basics of what you need to get started, and you've got all your RBAC in place, you've got your policies in place to make sure everything stays secure. And you can also use the YAML pipelines to make sure literally everything is in code. So once I've ironed out whatever the bugs were with this, I'm sure I'll get it up onto GitHub and go and click this. I remember when I first discovered ARM templates, I was very excited that I could just tear things down and build them back up again. And blueprints were even more exciting because infrastructures can be hard work sometimes. Azure doing a lot of this as well, but that you click a button and deploy what you need to deploy, like Chris was showing. So that's what I'm attempting to do, and I promise there won't be any bugs in a second one. But if people want to say anything around streaming off those hubs into Delta Lake in the future, let me know, and we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Griff. Do you want to take any questions, or in the interest of time, shall we ask people to email anything through, or get on the group and ask some questions, and you'll be good to guide people through on that medium?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Okay. Right. The main event's coming up now. Then, so
applause for Griff.
Yeah.
Everyone off mute.
Thanks, Griff. Appreciate that. Really good stuff.
Yeah, really good. Yeah. Thank you, Griff.
Okay. Hopefully everybody is good for time. We're just running a little bit late, but that's to be expected on these events. Stick around now. We're going to get Abul to get the Kahoot quiz on the screen for us. So I'm assuming everybody's got Kahoot on their devices. Abul, do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay, John?
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
So I'm just firing up the Kahoot quiz. Just give me.
Right, whilst you're doing that, I'll explain then. Right, so Microsoft have been really generous for us for this meet. They've given us a few Domino's pizza vouchers, which is brilliant news, especially for me. I love pizza. Who doesn't? So what we're going to do, I think, is we're going to give, because we're generous, because we're in the Welsh Azure user group, we're going to give first and second place prize for the quiz. So that will be a £25 Domino's voucher courtesy of Microsoft. So thanks to the Microsoft guys there for sorting that out for us. And what we'll also do, there's a feedback form that I'll stick the slide up at the end of the quiz. Obviously, feedback into the group. We really hope you've enjoyed yourself, and we hope you enjoy the quiz now and you win something. Really would love you all to stick around and come back to the next one, partake in the group, and leave some feedback and things like that. Yeah, so like I say, I'll stick the slide up at the end of this quiz now. If you leave some feedback, what we're going to do is we're going to pick 2 random people, and we're going to give those 2 people a £25 Domino's voucher as well. So worthwhile for literally a minute of your time at the end. Really give us some good feedback. And on that note, get your devices out, get Kahooting, and give it a minute or so for people to jump on. Do you want a full screen? Go on.
Can you hear music at all?
No, you're not sharing it through Teams. Go to the top of the Teams and select share audio if you want to play the music. And full screen your window. There we go. Can't see the screen yet. There we are. Yep. Well, right, we've got 14 players so far. Can everybody hear me okay? The music.
Music's probably a bit loud.
Right, music's a bit loud. Music. Oh, it's off completely now.
So I'm trying to make it.
You can't get it. Is that good?
The music's on nice finger.
Yeah, can't hear you, Bob. Oh. Well, it actually enjoyed, yeah. Right, what we got? 19 anymore? How many we got? We got like 30 people. So give it a give it people need to stick the app on their phone, get it downloaded. Yeah, music's drowning me out. Well,
Okay, should I turn it off?
I think you're gonna have to. It was a nice thought. We're gonna have to start telling each other jokes instead. So come on, if anybody wants to jump in now, take yourselves off mute, partake, say hello.
21. Any more? Funny more?
Come on, and what are we on? 21? 21?
So far,
Is anybody struggling to get on? Do you want to kick off, or is anybody still trying to get on? Either come off mute and tell us, or just quickly.
So you can find the app on the App Store, Google Play Store, anything like that should be available.
There we are. I think we're possibly good. Nobody's messaging.
Yeah, shall we kick it off then?
Take the floor up. I'll leave it up to you. You can be MC of the quiz.
All right. Well,
you.
Okay. Thanks, guys. So, okay, I think we've got 22 players. So we'll kick it off. Hopefully, you guys enjoy the quiz. The questions are going to be based around blueprints, cloud adoption framework, and enterprise scale, which the guys have put together. So hopefully you enjoy it. You get 20 seconds per question. There's a choice of multiple choice. You've got true or false questions. So do keep a very close eye on what type of question it is. So I'm going to hit start if you guys are ready. Okay. So this is just a small introduction of our group. So no need to answer at this point. Okay. And then we are going to kick off now. So the first questions we base around blueprints. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, off we go. So you should see the options come up on your phone. When you're happy, select your answer.
Bull, it looks like we're starting from question 3 there. I don't know if that matters.
Was that question 3?
Yeah.
Hold on. It should have been question 1, John, I think. Oh, yeah, it is question 1. Yeah, it is. It's just the third slide.
All right, go for it. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
There we are.
I'm confused for a second. I don't know what's going on. So this indeed is the first question. So thanks, guys. We're going to start on to the next one. So we've got Alan E at the top. Fantastic. Okay. on to the next one. 3, 2, 1. It's a true or false question. Fantastic. Okay, guys, we're gonna hit next. Let's see. Oh, Paul C's taken over. Fantastic. Right. 3, 2, 1. Let's go. That's 5 seconds. 2, 1. Excellent. Okay, guys. On to the next one. So who's on the leaderboard? And still Paul at the top. Fantastic. Right. 3, 2, 1. So the quiz. Last 5 seconds. 2, 1. Excellent. Okay. Ross is taking the lead. Brilliant. Right, on to the next one, guys. 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Great, Ross is still up top. So on to the next one. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So this again, so we just completed the blueprint questions. So now we're going on to the cloud adoption framework questions. So that's going to start straight away. That's 5 seconds. Awesome. Okay. Let's use that top. Ross at the top. Brilliant. Right. So on to the next one. 3, 2, 1. That's 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Brilliant. Okay. So, well, Ross is still winning. Brilliant. So on to the next one, guys. 3, 2, 1. Okay, last 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, fantastic. And Ross still at the top. All right, on to the next one, guys. 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. That's a quick one.
How are we getting on, guys? Who's winning? I just had to go and get a drink.
Looks
Who's
like
on top? Ross.
yeah.
7,500. Okay.
Wow.
Has it been a tough competition at the top?
It is, yeah. All right, guys. So again, 3, 2, 1. Last 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, fantastic. And oh, Ross has dropped. Darren at the top. Fantastic. Right, on to the next one, guys. 3, 2, 1. Seconds. Brilliant. Okay, so it's up. Oh, Ross is back. Excellent. 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. Next one. Ross still up top. Okay, guys, so 3, 2, 1. And that's the end of that one. Fantastic. So these are our last set of questions on Azure Enterprise Scale. So when you guys are ready, in 3, 2, 1. Last 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. Great. Okay. Oh, Alan's at the top. Brilliant. Okay, guys, on to the next one. 3, 2, 1. It's a multi-select question, so please remember to hit submit. Last 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. It's Chris at the top. Excellent. All right, guys, on to the next one. 3, 2, 1.
This is hotting up now, Paul.
It is indeed.
Last couple of questions. Make them count.
Make it count. Absolutely.
I just had a message from somebody using this on a phone.
5.
I think we need to read the questions out next time.
Okay, cool. Right, fantastic. Crystal up top. Okay, so on to the next one. 3, 2, 1.
Multi-select.
Yep. Last 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, brilliant.
Oh,
Still at top.
Oh,
Right, guys, on to the next one. 3, 2, 1. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Oh, Ross is back. All right, brilliant. On to the next one. 3, 2, 1.
Oof. We're down to the last question now, are we?
I think we are, John. Yep. So we're
Ross
going
and
to
Melanie, first and second. First and second place are going to get their vouchers. Make this one count. It's quite close as well.
All right. So 3, 2, 1. It is the last one.
Oh.
That's 5 seconds for. Oh, fantastic. Right, John. So are we ready to see who the winner is?
Who are the winners?
Know the truth.
The winners. 2, remember, first and second.
So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Right. I'm gonna hit next. It's a podium time.
Here we go. 3rd place, Colin V. Well done, Colin. 2nd, Alan E.
Alan, amazing. And
Alan Emmanuel. 1st place.
Drum roll, and it's Ross.
There we are, Ross.
2 days, amazing.
Well done, guys. I tell you what, Alan, Ross, do me a favour, just drop your emails in the chat window for me, or email me, message me direct, whatever you need to do. I think I'm probably connected with you on LinkedIn anyway. But yeah, get your emails through to me, and I'll get you your prize. Your 1st and 2nd place. You both won a £25 Domino's voucher. However, don't all drop off. There's one more thing to do, and I'm just going to quickly share the screen. Thanks, Paul, for running that. Brilliant, mate. Well done, all. Thanks for participating. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Okay, so please, thank you, everybody, first and all. Thanks to all the speakers. Thanks to Griff for speaking about Blueprint. Really big thanks for Chris for joining us and talking us through enterprise scale. It's been our pleasure, guys, to host this event, and hopefully we can make the next one much better. Really thank you all for attending. Hopefully you've had a great night. I've really enjoyed myself, and I've learned some really great things from the speakers we've had tonight. Save the date, 12th of November is our next meetup. It's going to be virtual again, I'm sure of that. So save that date, get on the meetup, get yourself RSVP'd now. Right, if you can scan that QR code, go to that URL. If you can fill our feedback form in, what we're going to do is, for 2 people, we will randomly select and give you 2 guys a £25 Domino's voucher as well. So leave your details. There's a space just to leave your email address, and what we'll do after, we'll select 2 people at random and obviously send you your voucher. So on that note, can I just call out huge thanks to Servant for being our sponsors. Obviously we talked about CAF. They're a CAF ready partner, so any questions, go and have a chat with those guys. Huge thanks to Microsoft for supporting us, and more importantly, thanks to our speakers and you guys for joining and listening to everything that we've got to tell you. Fill in the feedback form. Let us know what you liked. Let us know what you didn't like. Give us some suggestions. If you want to speak, reach out to us. If you want to do something with the group, reach out. We're here to kind of make this one work, and hopefully when we get out of COVID, we can all meet each other face to face. So anybody from the user group team got anything else to say? If you want to come off mute and just say anything you like.
No, it's been a great event. Thank you all.
Brill. So yeah, thanks all. Go ahead. Thank you for coming. Fill in that feedback form, and we will see you at the next one.
Yeah, well done, John and guys. Great event. Really good stuff.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Ed. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers all.
Thanks, John.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
Hey, John.
Cheers, bye.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.